All right, welcome everybody to week 7, day 3. It's your boy, live from Providence, Rhode Island. Shh. Okay, maybe I'm still here in Fresno. Huh?
Hi, we're in Rhode Island right now.
Yes, this is Providence, Rhode Island, where I'm broadcasting from
We
right
totally
now.
just moved our house to Rhode Island.
Yes, can't you tell?
Yeah, can you tell?
all
we
the
just
scrolls
had
are
a
the same.
giant flying crane just like pick us up and put us in Rhode Island.
That's exactly how it works. And you got like some sauce on your face, girl. Go wash your face. Okay, we're going to be continuing our discussion
It is called frosting.
Frosting? Yeah, go wash it off. So we're going to be continuing our discussion of fallacies today. Before we do that, though, please be aware that your next Scratch assignment is up on the modules section of Canvas, and it is your job to make a Space Invaders clone in Scratch. You will have 1 week to do it from today, and so just take a look at that assignment, and it'll have all the directions and step-by-step things you need to do Space Invaders in Scratch. It should be fun. Okay, and reminder, zyBooks is due next week as well. Make sure you get all those readings done. It's not hard. It doesn't take long. Easy questions. Just make sure you do it. Okay. So, fallacies. We are going to be talking about a number of fallacies today, and if you have trouble keeping them all straight, just beware. I have cheat sheets available. If you look in the files section on Canvas, I have a cheat sheet that explains every single fallacy I talk about in this class. I might even have a copy of it right here. And you can see it's got all these fallacies, quite a few fallacies, with explanations of them and an example of each one. That'll be useful for reviewing for midterm 2 coming up in 5 weeks. Okay, so circular logic. So circular logic comes about when you assume something to be true and use that to conclude that that thing is true. For example, if you assume that God is not real, then you can deduce from that fact that all the evidence in the Bible is wrong, right? Because if God's not real, then every single example in the Bible of, God, dropping a meteor on Sodom and Gomorrah, or, turning the sea to blood, all those are all wrong, right? And then from that, the fact that there is no evidence for God, you can conclude that God is not real. So, have you actually accomplished a proof that God is not real? No. Because what you've done is assumed that it's not real, and through a circuitous path, you have arrived back at your conclusion, but like, look, my conclusion is true because, yeah. So, it's called assuming your conclusion, or circular logic. So, yeah, if you assume that werewolves are real, no matter how many steps of logic you take, you can eventually prove that werewolves are real because you assumed it.
Werewolves aren't real.
But if you assume they're real, you can prove that they're real. It's called circular logic. It's a fallacy. It's bad argumentation, girl.
What?
It's bad argumentation. I'm teaching my students bad argumentation.
Why are you teaching them bad argumentation?
Why am I teaching? Because they might want to work in the media someday, girl, or politics. You got to know this stuff. Public relations.
Why do you want them to lie on?
I don't, girl. The point of this class is that when you.
And why is it so late?
The point is, I'm recording
this.
this.
So late?
I'm recording this for them when I'm in Rhode Island. The point is that when you recognize fallacies, then when you're watching the news or you're listening to a political speech or something like that, you're like, oh, that's circular logic. And it makes you immune to them. Okay? So when you are a fully fledged critical thinker, it makes watching political speeches and opinion pieces a lot more interesting and amusing. It's like a spectator sport. Like, oh, they're doing that one. Okay, cool. Oh, look, they just said an ad populum. They're appealing to popularity. All right, cool. And it's just, it helps make you immune to those rhetorical tricks that people do. Thank you, Ro. Okay. I know aliens are real because I had an encounter that could only be explained by aliens.
I knew that aliens are real because Daddy's currently an alien.
Am I? With my antenna right here?
See? There's proof.
There you go. Yeah, it's something like that. Okay. Undeniable proof.
Actually, no, I lied. He's a bunny.
I'm a bunny. Is that how it works? Those are my bunny ears?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, he's a fox. Or something.
Right. The only possible explanation for you winning the poker game is cheating, therefore you are cheating.
Cheating.
This action is morally wrong because it's illegal. It is illegal because it is morally wrong. These are all examples of circular logic. Okay, appeal to consequences. So appeal to consequences is called argumentum ad consequentiam. And basically, something is true because I don't, I want it to be true, more or less. Or, for example, a lot of people don't want global warming to be true because if global warming was true, it would be immoral for them to drive their truck, right? So, if global warming is an existential threat to humanity, then you could probably make an argument that you should be driving a Prius, instead of a truck, and doing your part to not end humanity. And so a lot of people will simply say, well, global warming is false because I don't want it to be true. The consequences of global warming being true are unpalatable to me, therefore it is not true. And this is, of course, wishful thinking, right? Appeal to consequences is just wishful thinking, right? If atheists don't want God to be real, then any argument for God being real is automatically false because they don't want it to be. Okay? And vice versa. A lot of Christians want God to be real, and so they'll accept even a very weak, very horrible argument because I want it to be true. It's wishful thinking. Okay. Not all people accept that our president is our president, but he's still the president, right? And what's really funny is that I haven't changed this slide in several years, right? And it doesn't matter if you're talking about Biden or Trump or whatever. There's a lot of people that just are like, nope, not my president. And it doesn't matter apparently who's in office. There's still a large number of people who just say, not my president. He's still your president. You might not like it, but it's still your president. Okay. So this is from Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, which is one of my favorite webcomics. They have a lot of philosophy and a lot of the topics I talk about in this class. Like, I could probably find a relevant SBMC comic for it. SMBC comic for it. This is a great one. If P is false, I will be sad. I do not wish to be sad, therefore P is true. So this is appeal to consequences. Okay? And so humans are emotional creatures. We really are. We want to be critical thinkers. We want to be rational. We want to use the rules of logic and truth tables and things like that. But in reality, in our daily lives, we typically use emotion more than reason in a lot of cases. So appeal to consequences is very, very common in our society because people simply don't want something to be true, therefore they act as if it is false. All right. Exception to this is, of course, the pragmatic theory of truth. So, if it's not beneficial for it to be true, then it's false. So pragmatic people might actually just agree with appeal to consequences, right? In general, though, most people reject the notion that something is false just because I want it to be. That is generally not accepted as a valid form of argumentation. This is true because I want it to be. Not a lot. Okay, false generalization. So there's actually quite a few false generalization fallacies that go under different names. In general, though, sometimes you'll see it called hasty. Hasty generalization is one kind of it. So hasty generalization is when you have a fairly small sample size. For example, I bought 3 Western Digital hard drives back in the day, and all 3 of them broke within a month. And so I was like, no, that's it for me. I'm never buying Western Digital again. And to this day, I basically haven't, except sort of accidentally. Like if I buy a PlayStation or something that comes with a Western Digital hard drive, I don't really beat myself up over it. But really, it's been 20 years, and I still don't. I'm still mad. I'm still mad about it, because if you think about the amount of time it takes to go and install Windows and put Steam on and download your games and restore your backups and all that stuff, and then the thing goes, return it to Fry's, get a new drive, do it again, return it to Fry's, get a new drive, do it again, by the time you're reinstalling Windows and Steam and all of your games and restoring your backups the fourth time, you're just like not in a good place emotionally. And so, yeah, I know that Western Digital is a very reliable company, but yeah, I was just like, no, I'm not giving my money anymore. I am mad. And so basically a false generalization or a hasty generalization comes about when you have a very small sample size and you use that to draw a generalization too soon. Now, when you work in stats, if any of you have taken stats, you'll know that there is actually the ability to generalize from data. That's what stats is all about. On average, people in America make $65,000 per year. Here's the curve of their income distributions. That's a generalization, right? Like you can generalize from it. Or you get reliability reports from data centers where they go through thousands of Western Digital drives. You can then conclude from it, are they reliable? Are they not reliable? A false generalization or hasty generalization is you have a very small sample set and you're just like, oh, they're garbage, they're horrible. From that. That said, I still don't buy them because I was mad. And also that said, the time that I was buying those Western Digital hard drives, they had a failure rate of 80%. They actually had a manufacturing defect for about 2 or 3 months where their drives had a failure rate of 80%. Guess when I bought my drives? During that time period. And so my brain was just like, no, we're not buying any more of those. And even though I know that the problem's been fixed, long since fixed a long time ago, I'm still kind of mad. And I don't know. You tell me on Discord, should I go back to buying Western Digital hard drives again, or should I continue my...
You won't be able to see them on Discord.
They will be posting the responses to this on Discord while I'm in Providence.
Oh, okay, I get it.
So let me know. Should I go back to buying Western Digital hard drives? I think I have been doing a lot of Hitachi and what was it? Let's take a look. What components? Hard drives. Hard drives, desktop internal hard drives. And let's go about the big boys here. Okay. All right. Who is the biggest of the big drives around? 20 terabyte drives. Let's look at this.
Well, these are fancy.
Seagate,
cheese.
Western Digital Gold, Seagate Iron Wolf Pro. So you can get a 20 terabyte hard drive for $500. So I think Seagate was the last one that I bought.
What's Seagate?
They're a company that makes hard drives.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Toshiba. Yeah, I think I have a Toshiba drive as well in here somewhere, 16 terabyte, something like that. Yeah, one of the downsides of teaching game development is that you
use up a lot of hard drive
space. Use a lot of hard drive space. Yeah, I made a little game with my daughter, 100 gigs, right? So I have
100 gigs.
100 gigs for that little game that we made.
What?
I know, right?
There's only so little in it.
I know.
What the heck?
Because we imported a lot of things we didn't use. Like, we had a bunch of flowers and buildings and stuff like that we just didn't use. So if I wanted to, I could go through and delete things out of it. But, the point is that, yeah, I use a lot of hard drive space. I teach game development, so I go through a lot.
Are you going to show them the game?
Nah, they're all right. If they want to take game development with me, we can talk about that some other time. Okay. So anyhow, you tell me, should I go back to buying Western Digital? Their drive was kind of more expensive than the Seagate's. I don't know. You tell me. I'm good for now. My drive. Let's see how I'm doing on my.
Wait. So they are here?
No. This is just a recording, girl.
Oh, because it looks like all these people are here.
Oh yeah, I mean there's people on Discord right now. Yeah, there you go. So you can see.
Okay.
My H drive is I think it's a 16 terabyte drive. My main drive is a 10 terabyte.
Are you allowed to have as many drives as you want?
Yeah. Eventually you're going to run out of ports, SATA ports and things like that. But, yeah. Yep. Okay. So cherry picking. So cherry picking is sort of when you deliberately ignore certain cases and focus on other cases. This is extremely common in the media and in politics. Politicians oftentimes, in fact, the State of the Union is going on right now while I'm recording this. Oftentimes politicians will say, when I was visiting West Virginia, I met old Miss Smith, a 90-year-old tuberculosis patient who has one arm and one leg, and she told me what you need to do is get out there and take care of the children. And so I said, you know what, I will take care of the children. And yeah. So basically, cherry picking is when
Cherry pickers is a type of exercise in PE.
That is true also. The 1, 2, 3, I think. Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
So cherry picking is when you give an example and you say that example is, it represents the group. So because I talked to old Mrs. Smith in West Virginia, in a certain sense, she's speaking for all West Virginians, Other examples would be like, if you look at the reaction to like Antifa from Fox News, Fox News will find the absolute worst Antifa people possible and put them on television. There was the anti-work person who about a month or two ago, Fox News interviewed one of the subreddit moderators for /r/anti-work, and he was the part-time dog walker, and just sort of really discredited the entire anti-work movement by saying, look, he's a speaker for the movement. Here is your perfect example of an anti-work person, and he is a part-time dog walker and lives at home with his family, and et cetera, et cetera. Cherry picking, right? You pick a very specific example and you use that to stand for an entire group. It's a false generalization. It is a type of false generalization fallacy, right? And a lot of times it's done very deliberately, right? Contrawise, if you look at what the left wing does, they will find the absolute worst right-wing people and say, look, this person here represents all of the right-wing protesters, right? And they'll get like the focus of the guy with the buffalo horn shaman, like how much screen time that guy got. What was his name? The QAnon shaman. Yeah, this guy, if you remember him. So, if you look at like CNN's coverage, like that represents all right-wing protesters everywhere at any time permanently. It's cherry picking, right? It's cherry picking because it's a very powerful icon. There's a guy in these buffalo horns running around Congress, and so it's a great way of stereotyping groups. If you want to make a group look bad, what you do is you cherry pick the worst element of them and say, look, this is what Antifa is like. This is what the January 6th protesters were like. You just pick the worst example to make them look bad. Contrawise, if they're on your team, then you find the best examples to cherry pick, right? So if you are trying to round up support for Ukraine against Russia, then you find the very best speakers you can find for Ukraine and put them on television and things like that. So
you're basically taking your opinion, supporting it with a bunch of people speaking and making speeches.
Yeah, so cherry picking is when you very carefully select the people that you want to put on camera, or in studies and things like that. But we're talking about the media right now.
So it looks like there's a lot of people who believe the same thing.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and so even though that person might not actually be representative of the group, by giving them screen time and kind of making them out to be the exemplar for the group, then you can tar and feather an entire group of people, whether it's /r anti-work, the QAnon protesters, the Antifa people, either way. Yeah, basically for any group you can cherry pick. So. So basically, if somebody says something bad about a group that you're part of, then you typically say, "Oh, you're just cherry picking. You're picking the worst person. They're the example to the rule." But then when somebody says something bad about a group you don't like, you say, "Oh yeah, that person represents the group." That's in-group bias. So in-group bias is a cognitive bias that underlies this thing, where basically, if somebody says something bad about your group, then you do what. Like your brain will do what it can to minimize the cost to your ego. But when somebody says something bad about a group you don't like, then you automatically tend to believe it. In group bias, like things like that. So cherry picking is also used in science. If you very carefully select patients for a study, you can get a study to say anything you want. If you If you want to make a point that binge drinking is out of control in America, what you do is you select college freshmen for your study that are, in welcome week, and you ask them, have you had a drink within the past 7 days? So then you get to publish your study. Look, 85% of Americans have had a drink in the past 7 days. It's a pervasive problem in science as well, because if you select the people for your study a certain way, if you cherry pick them, then you can make the data say whatever you want, because you're selecting the people you're surveying. Contrawise, after you do an experiment, you can select just the examples you like and dismiss the other ones as outliers, right? Depending on how that's done, that can either be, gross scientific misconduct or, the way science is done sometimes. Because you have to clean your data, you have to discard outliers, and so you have to be very careful, though, if you're trying to do science honestly, that you don't just I don't like those numbers. Let's get them out of here. Oh, look, my results are statistically significant. It's something you have to be very careful for if you want to be an ethical scientist, which I recommend you be an ethical scientist. So, in general, what you need to do as an individual to avoid these generalization fallacies is you need to look at the stats. Stats are the solution to the problem. Okay? So if you can get stats on the QAnon people, what they believe, what their goals were in the January 6th riots, then you can make a statement. Like I would say, if you've done your due diligence and you've surveyed people and you've got your stats and you've got numbers and you got data and you've analyzed it, and ideally you've passed it through peer review, so the peer review people have looked at your math and your methods and your data, and they've kind of said, okay, it looks good to me. If you go through all that, then I think the generalization is fine. But as far as I know, I'm not aware of any study that has substantially surveyed the 1/6 rioters or QAnon people or Antifa to see what they actually believe and what their ideas are and things like that. It's just all cherry picking as far as I can tell. I don't know if you're aware of any such studies. Let me know, because I've never seen one. So every time I see some pundit on television talking about what they believe, I'm just like, how do you know? How do you know? Oh, well, there's this guy who went on and said we're trying to overthrow the government. Okay. Is that just one guy? Are you cherry picking that one guy? What percentage of people share the beliefs? If you don't know that, you're just, you're making a fallacy as far as I can tell. And if, Fox News says, all Antifa wants is to install communism. It's like, do they? How do you know? Have you talked to them? I know you've talked to a person, but have you surveyed them? Do you know what percentage of them are trying to install a communist government in America? Do you know? No? You're just cherry picking. So, stats are the solution to false generalizations. You have to do the legwork. You have to do the math. You have to do the studies. You have to peer review it. Do your analysis. Run it past other people who look at your analysis and make sure you're not screwing up somewhere. That's the solution. And once you've done all that, then it's not a false generalization anymore, and it's a valid generalization. Yeah? So, yeah, anytime I see somebody just look at an isolated example and be like, that's how those people are, No stats, no case. All right? So, a couple years ago, a Bernie bro yeah, so, okay, well, that's not the case I was thinking of. So, a Bernie Sanders supporter is trying to kill Joe Biden. Not you. It's one of those things that you would think that would have gotten more press. You know, because like 5 years ago, a guy tried assassinating the majority whip. And that seems to me like a pretty substantial act. You know, for somebody to like try assassinating, you know, the second in command after the Speaker of the House. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Didn't seem to get much news coverage, but you know. And so the person was a left-wing political activist and was trying to kill a Republican. And basically, if you look at the reaction to it from the left and from the right, it's very different, right? So the left was like, well, you can't blame us for the actions of one person. And the right wing was like, see, that is emblematic of the Bernie Sanders supporters. They're all trying to murder us and things like that. So, you know, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that if it's your group, you minimize and downplay and say, oh, it's just an isolated example. But if it's a group you don't like, then it's like, see, that's what they're like. And in none of these cases have I seen stats, have I seen peer-reviewed studies, things like that. And so it's all just, you know, smoke and mirrors and noise, you know. And that's the state of our media. Like, that's the state of our politics. You know, it's just, you know, they'll make political points and use fallacies left and right for, you know, intentionally. They'll intentionally use fallacies. Okay, so moving goalposts. So on that high moral note, let's talk about moving goalposts. So a moving goalpost fallacy is when somebody makes a claim, somebody else proves the first person was wrong, or gives a counterexample showing they're wrong, and then the first person changes their claim after the fact. Okay? So I say there has never been a good Taylor Swift album. And then you say, well, you know, you liked all those songs on Red, didn't you? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, you're kind of right. But I don't want to admit that I'm wrong. So, well, other than that one, she's never had a good album. So, moving goalposts is when somebody doesn't admit they're wrong. And admitting you're wrong is fine, by the way. Like if you say, hey, there's never been a female president, somebody could be like, are you talking just about America or, you know, worldwide? You're like, oh, sorry, just about America. Right? Like if you admit you're wrong, it's not a fallacy. It's like, yeah, sorry, I was talking about America. You know, because there have been female presidents, you know, elsewhere, right? And so moving goalposts is when somebody does admit they're wrong, but they just go back and they sort of change their claim after the fact, so they can't be wrong. And there's a you can find videos on this. Yeah, there you go. So moving the goalpost, right? So you're wrong, and then so you just change the target, you know, after the fact. Okay. And so, yeah, and so it's good to admit you're wrong, right? Like, you know, if you make a mistake, say, oh yeah, you're right, I misspoke. I'm sorry. But moving goalposts is when people try and do an ego-preserving move and say, well, you know what I meant. Okay, so they insist they were correct all along, but they sort of change their claim so that it's not wrong anymore. A related fallacy is called no true Scotsman. And so no true Scotsman is like half moving goalpost, half false generalization. So the classic no true Scotsman story goes like this. A person makes a claim. All Scotsmen eat kippers for breakfast. Kippers are actually surprisingly delicious. They're a type of salted fish. The last time I was in Scotland, I had them, and they don't look good, you know, but they're actually pretty amazing. There you go. So they're like a flat salted fish, and they're actually really good. So, person A makes the claim, all Scotsmen eat kippers for breakfast. And then person B says, well, Angus is a Scotsman, but he doesn't eat kippers for breakfast. I should probably change this so you can see that this is person A, and this is a different person. This is person B. To which person A responds, well, Angus isn't a true Scotsman. Okay, so what's happening here is person A makes a generalization, a false generalization, right? Because it's not true that all Scotsmen eat kippers for breakfast. Person B comes up with a counterexample. Well, look at Angus over there. He is a Scotsman. He doesn't eat kippers for breakfast. So that would normally be a defeating counter-argument, right? If somebody makes a claim, all X are Y, if you can come up with just one example where that's not true, you've defeated the argument. It's a classic counterexample, right? If you claim all X are Y, and you can come up with just one example where it's not that case, then you've defeated the argument. And so what's happening here is they're not doing exactly a moving goalpost, like they're not changing it to, well, everybody but Angus. What the move is here on person A's part, the rhetorical trick they're trying here is they're going to discount Angus as being an actual Scotsman. So I'm saying all Scotsmen eat kippers. Well, here's Angus. He doesn't eat kippers. Well, that makes him not a Scotsman. He's a non-Scotsman. He might live in Scotland, but he's not a Scotsman. He's not a true Scotsman. Because a true Scotsman would eat kippers for breakfast. So, that's the fallacy. It's not true.
What are kippers?
Kippers are really good, Carl. Like they're like this flat salted fish. Here. Take a look. What do you think? Ada, take a look. These are kippers.
Oh.
Yeah. And they are
Kippers.
They're
fish. They look like bladderfish.
They look like bladderfish from Subnautica. Yeah. Kind of do. Yep. And they're actually good. Yeah. Okay. So there's a time when it's not a fallacy. For example, if you say that doctors recommend that you get regular sleep, and then person B says, well, Matt says you don't need good sleep. If Matt's not actually a doctor, you could say, well, Matt has never been to medical school. He's not actually a doctor. He's a doctor of mathematics. Like he's not a medical doctor. You know what I mean? So, is there a doctor on this plane? This man's having a heart attack. I'm a doctor of computer science. If he needs me to write a program real fast, I can help you with that. But you know what I mean? So sometimes it is valid to say no true X, like if it's relevant, right? So like if somebody says that they're Christian but they don't believe in God, like you could probably make an argument they're not a true Christian. You know what I mean? If they're a Muslim that doesn't like Muhammad, you could probably make an argument they're not a true Muslim. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of some fundamental prerequisites for a lot of these things. So in general, though, when you see this form of argument, it's a no true Scotsman fallacy. Okay, so speaking of fish, we're talking about herrings now. So a non-sequitur we talked about last time, if you remember from the troll lecture on Wednesday, which I had a lot of fun making, by the way. I did that last semester and had just so much fun trolling my students last semester that I used it again this year. I did actually have a doctor's or a dentist appointment in the morning, and so I canceled the live recording and then put together that troll thing to make it look like it was a recording accident. Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean?
I'll show you. I'll show you in a bit.
No, just tell me.
I started the video with like, okay, we're going to be talking about these 3 fallacies today. Then all of a sudden it cuts to the end. I'm like, all right, so that was a great lecture. If I do say so myself, all right. If you need to look up more, look it up on Wikipedia. Bye. It was like a minute and a half long. Yeah. And I was kind of afraid that students would like get upset about it and like complain to the dean. I'm not getting my money's worth. But to be fair, I covered those 3 fallacies like pretty quickly in a minute and a half. So enjoy the rest of your hour. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So hopefully, I haven't seen the responses yet on Discord to it.
We started trolling your students.
I love trolling my students. Yeah, that's why I teach. If I can't troll my students, I'll just quit. So, Okay,
I'm
so
pretty sure you won't quit. And I'm pretty sure you're not going to. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be allowed to troll as long as you want.
yes, I think so. But
until you actually upset the students.
if I didn't have fun teaching, I probably would quit, actually. Because
at first you didn't even want to teach, right?
no, not exactly. No, I like, because I teach because I like teaching, but I can make a lot more money programming than teaching. Let's put it that way. So why? Because computer science people are in high demand right now.
How come?
How come? There is a labor shortage in computer science, and so like I have students.
Oh, so you fellow students, you have a good job chance right now.
Yeah. Well, they're all mostly freshmen. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Yeah. Computer science is a great career. And if I didn't enjoy teaching, I literally wouldn't do it.
I want to become a scientist.
You're going to become a scientist?
Yes.
Do you know what kind of scientist?
Some kind of scientist.
Some kind of scientist. All right, that's fair.
Our engineers.
Are engineers scientists?
No, our engineers well paid.
Yeah, engineers are well paid.
Oh,
Depends on the field.
Because they make stuff like that. Bill Gates made this stuff. Chairs, stuff, more stuff.
Let's see what the salary is for an electrical engineer these days. 68,000 to 162,000.
Per.
Average salary is 90,000 a year. What about
Is that a lot? Is that a lot?
90,000 is not bad. That's nationwide. Petroleum engineers make about 90 as well. Let's see. What kind of science interests you? Biology?
No, it's like germs and like cures and that stuff. Actually, no.
Making cures?
Yeah, like making cures.
Liquid Colorado? Yeah, it's about 90,000. Wildlife biologist?
Corona.
A great fish biologist.
What? What? I have a fish tank. I'm sorry, but I can't show you because apparently, we're in Rhode Island. No, I'm just kidding. We're not in Rhode Island. Not yet.
67,000 a year to be
Actually,
a fish.
No. That's the only guy that's going to Rhode Island. But anyways.
That's in Seattle.
The
Seattle.
The camera wire isn't long enough so I can show you my fish tank.
Computer science jobs in Seattle. 100 to 150, 85 to 160, 130 to 190, 120 to 240. Yeah. Yep. Just depends.
How come Bill Gates is so famous?
How come Bill Gates is so famous? Because he founded Microsoft, and Microsoft,
yeah,
whether you love him or hate him, like they changed the world. So.
How did he change the world?
The personal computer, I mean, it's hugely transformative. Like, think about it, like what we're using.
Did the person who made the very first computers become millionaires, or the person who invented it?
No, not necessarily, because the first computers were like research projects and things like that. But yeah, the first, IBM, really kind of popularized the mainframe, and they became quite wealthy. All right, next fallacy. Red herring and non-sequitur. Non-sequitur we talked about in the troll lecture, and basically it's when the logic doesn't work. So really almost every fallacy is technically a non-sequitur, but it's more commonly used when you want to talk about just somebody giving a response that just doesn't connect to what was said before. And if you do that deliberately, it's called a red herring. Okay? So the difference between a red herring and a non sequitur is that the red herring is intentional. Very common in politics. If you ever look at a political debate, it's fun to see how often they actually answer a question. Because a lot of times they don't. They answer a different question. Because they don't want to answer a question that makes them look bad. Okay? Moderator, if implemented, your plan will cost $10 trillion. How do you plan to pay for it? Well, that's just a Republican talking point. Didn't answer the question. Right? Distract. Right? Moderator, abstinence-only sex education has been shown to be less effective at stopping teen pregnancies than comprehensive sex education. So if you don't want teens to get pregnant, why do you support it? Politician 2, well, I think one of our fundamental values in America is freedom and the holy bond between a parent and their child. Get the government out of our bodies. Yeah! And they applaud. Didn't answer the question. No connection whatsoever between the question and the answer. And it is very, very common. If you see people getting interviewed on television and and the interviewer asks them a tough question, a lot of times they will just not answer it and say a talking point instead. A talking point is oftentimes something distributed to everybody in the political party, saying these are the 5 things we're going to be saying over and over again this week. And so you ask them about the, tariff situation, with China, and they say, well, it's important to support the people of Ukraine. You're like, what? What is that? We're just talking about something else, and they have like their mental flashcards, and they'll just keep repeating the same points over and over again. And it's a bit cynical, but it's absolutely true. If you ever watch interviews, like how often they will just not answer a question. Okay, and if they do that deliberately to distract or something like that, it's called a red herring. Okay, so red herring is a deliberate distraction. A non sequitur is a more neutral term for when just the logic doesn't follow. Premise 1, if you study for this class, you will get an A. Premise 2, I like the Chronicles of Narnia. Conclusion, my daughter plays the bass guitar. Complete non sequitur. Complete non sequitur. Okay. Logic just doesn't follow at all. So there's actually a game called The Contender that allows you to do that. It's quite amusing. I have a copy of it in my classroom, and the goal is basically somebody asks you a question, and then you distract, and sometimes you can actually answer the question, but a lot of times you're like, how about this local sports team? Go Dogs! And so you can pander to your audience, you can distract from the question. Well, like my mother used to say, you either go big or you go home. What does that have to do with the question? And if you play this game, it makes political debates hilarious to watch, because it's almost like they're playing this card game. Like, how much pandering, how much distraction, how rarely they actually answer the question. Okay, so ask yourself these questions. Is this a red herring or is it a non sequitur? If I'm a tennis player, I'm a sports player. It's true. All right, true premise. Premise 2, I'm not a tennis player. It's also true. I'm not a tennis player. Therefore, I am not a sports player. This is a non sequitur. And this is, in fact, the denying the antecedent fallacy, right? X implies Y, not X, therefore not Y. This is denying the antecedent. It is a formal fallacy, and it's also technically a non sequitur, because it's not a red herring because it doesn't seem malicious, right? It doesn't seem like I'm trying to make the mistake. If I was trying to make the mistake, it'd be a red herring. And so this YouTube video here is of the Chewbacca defense in South Park. I will post the link onto the lecture room so you can watch this on your own without me getting copyright struck. Basically, Johnny Cochran, who is the defense attorney, one of the defense attorneys for O.J. Simpson, was parodied on South Park by suddenly just introducing Chewbacca and Wookiees and Endor, and it's just a complete distraction. Has nothing to do with anything. One of the jurors' heads explodes, I think, from it. Classic red herring. Okay. Red herring or non sequitur. People like looking at giant sequoias. Houses should have nice things to look at inside of them. Therefore, you should put giant sequoias inside of your house.
What?
People like looking at giant sequoias. True. Houses should have nice things to look at inside of them. Also true, I'd say. Therefore, you should put giant sequoias inside of your house.
Not true.
I
It's
don't think...
like you don't put ice cream on pizza even though you like them both.
Exactly, yeah. So you're right. I think this is a non sequitur. I don't think it's a red herring. It doesn't seem deliberate to me. Okay, red herring and non sequitur. People say that it was wrong for me to rig the primaries. But what does it mean for something to be wrong? Are there any objective moral systems we can all agree to? Until you can define for me and prove to me which moral system is correct, I don't think you can make a claim that what I did was wrong. Very common red herring, right? What does it mean for something to be wrong? Let's pause
what
our.
Does rig the primaries mean?
It means they did election fraud, right? And so everybody agrees that it's wrong. But what the person is trying to do here is they're trying to let's put this argument on hold, and then let's go into 2,000 years of philosophy and argue. It is absolutely illegal. Yeah, this is a politician.
There's your proof, sir.
This is a politician trying to distract and red herring. Let's pause this debate over whether I did something wrong until let's have a discussion over what it means to be wrong. Let's go into the theories of morality and really dig into that for a couple hundred years, and by that time people have forgotten about the crimes that I've committed. Very common mistake. Not a mistake, very common tactic.
Action.
Rhetorical tactic, because
Action.
until we can define our terms, we can't continue this discussion. So let's just start discussing terms and definitions and moral systems and, does God exist? Let's discuss that forever. And then we'll just forget about, me. Okay, so sometimes you do actually need to have agreement on definitions and things like that to bring clarity. A lot of times, though, when somebody wants to just put a debate on hold and start talking about something else, that is a red herring. Okay. So, and non sequitur is technically pretty much any formal fallacy, denying the antecedent, affirming the consequent. Those are all non sequiturs, because just non sequitur in general just means the logic doesn't follow. But more colloquially, what it means is that just the conclusion just doesn't have anything to do with the premise. Okay. So last one for today, because we got 4 minutes left. And last one for today will be strawman. So strawman is when you make somebody else's argument bad, deliberately, right? So what you do is, somebody presents an argument, and you caricature it, you stereotype it, you take it out to the extreme, and say, that's what you believe? How dare you? Very common in online situations. If you're arguing with somebody online, you're probably going to see a strawman argument. And the most common source of strawman comes from discarding qualifiers. So qualifiers are things like some, none, all, often, usually, maybe, rarely, occasionally, very, things like that. That sort of set the percentage that we're talking about, right? So for example, if I said, I think that sometimes we need to set controlled burns in the forest to control forest fires, right? Sometimes. I said sometimes. Somebody would be like, how dare you? You want to burn down all of the forests in America? What kind of monster are you? I'm like, no. I didn't say burn down all the forests. I said sometimes it could be necessary to do back burns and controlled burns and things like that to control forest fires. They're like, no, you said all, or they just don't even acknowledge the fact that they screwed up. They'll just stop responding at a certain point. And so it's really important if you're ever engaging with people to make sure that you're trying to characterize their argument correctly. And if they mischaracterize your argument, it's important to correct them. They're like, no, I didn't say all, I said sometimes. Very different word. So a very famous example of this is Kathy Newman and Jordan Peterson. She became famous for the sheer numbers of strawmen that she threw out in something like a 15-minute interview. So she just kept saying things like, so what you're saying is women shouldn't work. What you're saying is that we should all just go home and play with our dollies. And he's like, no, I'm not saying that, no. And it was a very famous example from, 4 or 5 years ago. And just one straw man after another. And it was there's compilation videos and things like that you can watch of all the different straw men that she made. Person A, I don't believe in God. Person B, so you must consider murder to be morally acceptable and humans having no intrinsic value. Like, gross straw man of what they said. Most atheists that I know don't consider murder to be moral, and a lot of them even still believe that humans have intrinsic value, etc., etc. For example, if you're a utilitarian, right, you would consider murder to be immoral, right, because it inflicts pain on people, right, and you don't need to be a theist to be a utilitarian. There's many atheist utilitarians, right? So person B is just straw manning, but it's a common straw man. Like if you look at trusted individuals, like a lot of theists don't trust atheists. in part because I think there's this going on here, which is that, well, if you don't believe in God, then you can't have any morals, and if you don't have any morals, I can't trust you. And that's a straw man of the position, because usually most atheists have some non-divine command theory, obviously. They have some moral framework they use with utilitarianism. I don't have stats on it, but it seems pretty common. And then you've also got Kantian ethics and all these other options as well. Divine command theory is only one kind of ethical frameworks. Okay, I think that it is a good idea to allow more commercial logging in our international forest. I would hate to see Yosemite clear-cut. Why would you? Right? And this is actually a real headline, right? So Trump wants national forests to become clear-cut for lumber. Like, Trump proposed more logging in various, I think it might have been in Bureau of Land Management lands or something like that. And so somehow that headline become clear-cutting Yosemite and clear-cutting Yellowstone and things like that, which is absolutely preposterous, and a straw man, right? So, that's our class for today, and we will do more fallacies next week. I will put up quizzes that will test you on your fallacious knowledge, your knowledge of fallacies, and I will put up the scratch assignment for you, and basically see if you can, keep all these fallacies straight in your head. Have fun watching television. State of the Union, like I said, is going on right now, so have fun, maybe picking out fallacies in that if you can. See if there's any colloquial stories that are used as examples for the whole and things like that. Just one more time. Politics and media become a lot more amusing after you've taken critical thinking, because you're like, that's the fallacy you're using, I see. Interesting. And keep score, have a little bingo card. All right, so I hope you all are enjoying your weekend. And I will see you back live for recording on Monday. Peace.